For joining us today. My name is Jennifer Tilden, and I am currently the head of government contracting for the United States Small Business Administration for Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. So if you're interested in getting involved in government contracting, I encourage you to come out and contact me when we're not in this class. I know we're going to be kind of compressed for time this evening, but I'm going to mention some other classes we have, and everything I say, you paid for. I'm going to put the slides up this evening on my LinkedIn. I'm available as Jennifer Tilden. You'll see a pride flag. I have green hair. I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. All of this is paid for by your tax dollars. So always ask. You're always welcome to any of my slides, any of my presentations. And I'm happy to work with anyone on anything I say tonight. So if you see anything and you want more info, please just tag me later, and I'm always happy to talk to folks offline. So I think I'm going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. So here we go with the slides. I apologize. I'm not getting other. Here we go. Are other folks seeing the slides?
Yeah, I can see them. I think you're
okay.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So we will start. So as I mentioned, I'm with the United States Small Business Administration. We're actually the federal agency who is charged with helping small businesses begin, grow, and succeed. Today, we're actually going to be talking about our government contracting portion. And a lot of people may not know this, but one of our main functions is to help small businesses like you get involved with selling to the federal government. And specifically, a lot of people come to us wondering if they are one of the companies who should start with selling to the federal government. And that's a question you may want to be asking yourself. Who should bid? Well, in order to even begin thinking about starting bidding at a federal level, you need to be registered in a system called the System for Award Management. That is at sam.gov. That is S, Sierra, A, Alpha, M, Mike.gov. Anytime you're dealing with a federal government website, it is going to have that GOV designation. The second that you lose the GOV, you're going to be dealing with a lot of commercial websites who want your money. And we're talking about big money here. A lot of outside consultants are going to be asking in the thousands of dollars sometimes for help you to get into systems like SAM. There are a lot of entities, myself included, who can help you get into SAM for free. So please, if you have somebody trying to make you pay here, always reach out to me, reach out to Temple. There are people who will help you do this for free. In order to be in SAM, you will need a DUNS number, a Dun and Bradstreet number. Currently, we are in the process of turning over to something new called a UEI. That is a unique entity identifier. However, we have not completed the turnover because of the COVID-19 epidemic. So right now you need a DUNS number. If you don't have a DUNS number, one will be provided to you for free when you register for SAM. So that is a bonus for becoming involved with SAM. Make sure all of your certifications are up to date before you start to bid. If you're interested in certifications, that's another thing that I do. We offer loads of classes on certifications through my office. They're all free. The main certifications currently available through the federal government are 8A, Hub Zone, Economically Disadvantaged Woman-Owned Small Business, Woman-Owned Small Business, and Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. In addition, if you're looking at having any strategic partnerships, please make sure that those are together before submitting a bid. In this case, when I say strategic partnerships, what I'm talking about is, in some cases, companies may find that it benefits them to, say, create a joint venture to go after a larger contract, or perhaps become involved in a mentor-protege arrangement. I'm always happy to talk to anybody that might be interested about how to go about finding a good joint venture, or how to go about becoming involved in a legitimate mentor-protege. But these are things that you want to have ready in advance. You don't want to find a contract and then try to get all your ducks in a row. You want to have your ducks in a row and then find a contract. So once you have yourself in SAM, and like I said, we're happy to help you get into SAM. That's pretty easy, actually. What do you do with that? Where do you go to actually find these quote unquote bids? And what is a bid anyway when you're talking about federal contracting? You hear everybody talking about, oh, I want to bid on a federal solicitation, but what does that really actually mean when you're talking about government work? When you're talking about government work, what you're talking about with a bid is usually something called a combined synopsis and solicitation. What that really means is back in the old days, and the old days in this case are way before my time, but back in ye olde days of contracting, contracting officers used to have to put out one document that basically said, this is everything, all the details about what we're about to go out and buy. And then after that, they had to go out and put out a second document later that said, okay, remember we said we were going to buy this? We are now buying it. Please now send us bids. And then someone said, you know, this is dumb. Why don't we just put out a document where we say, hey, we want to buy something, send us bids. And it was sort of part of that general Paperwork Reduction Act movement that we had a while back, but someone finally figured out that, hey, you can turn this, in fact, into one document where you describe the need and ask for the bid. That is the combined synopsis solicitation. That is where you'll actually see an advertisement out on the internet of the government saying, we need this thing, please write back to us with your answer. Generally, these synopsis solicitations are going to appear in one of three types, depending on what you sell. Either it's going to be an RFP, an RFQ, or an IFB. First, we have the RFP. An RFP is a request for proposal. You're usually going to see an RFP when we as the government need you to come up with a solution to a problem. We need cost estimating, and we need you to come up with a novel response to something. This isn't something like we need a widget and all we need for you to do is give us 100 widget price and we're going to compare you to other widget manufacturers. You see here my little sheep. My little sheep are an example of an RFP. Say I am the National Park Service and I have to get the lawn mowed at, I'm going to take an example of Carpenter's Hall down Philly. I can put out a combined synopsis and solicitation saying, I need the lawn mowed at Carpenter's Hall down Philly, and I need somebody that can get it to a particular height at a particular time, and I need it to meet particular specifications, but I can no longer tell the vendor how to do it. It used to be that I could tell the vendor, you have to use this type of lawnmower, you have to do a John Deere lawnmower at 1/4 inch, and you have to do it this way and this way. Everybody remembers the old days of government contracting, where we could make people do anything we wanted, and we basically had the $2 million toilet seats. Those days are over. Now what we can say is we need the lawn to, say, 2 inches. And you, as a contractor, could come in and say, we have sheep. Sheep are an entirely legitimate response. And in fact, in a lot of areas, they use things like goats and sheep where a lawnmower can't go. That's something like a request for proposal, where we will accept a novel answer. Request for proposal, your response will be something like plans or drawings. It may be curriculum vitae, things like resumes. It could be quality assurance plans, QAPs. Requests for proposals are going to be the most costly and time-consuming responses that you are going to see to any type of federal contract. Generally speaking, requests for proposal are going to fall under FAR Part 15, which is negotiated contracting. And you're most likely to see these if you are involved in service contracting. So if you do something like janitorial, IT, administrative services, this is most likely to come up for you. And I'm more than happy to talk with you about how to go about putting together a proposal for a contract like this. Alternatively, when I said this isn't a contract like the widgets, this is a widget contract. An RFQ is the exact opposite. If you are a vendor of supplies, you may very well see something called an RFQ. An RFQ is a request for quotation. This is essentially the government putting out a ask or a query for the newest, bestest pricing currently on a product. This is the type of request that we use most frequently. You'll see here for either COTS or under SET. What does that mean? That means that we use it most frequently under the simplified acquisition threshold, which means we use it for smaller buys, and we use it frequently for commercial off the shelf. Very much like normal people, the government finds it easier to buy stuff that anybody can get. It is much easier for me as a contracting officer to go down to Dell and to buy a Dell that is configured the same way that it is for the public than it is for me to go to Dell and to buy a specially configured decked out one. When we can buy a Dell that is the same configuration that I, as a private citizen, can buy, that is a great savings for the federal government. That is actually strongly preferred in the federal government because of those savings. So we try to get configurations like that. So we like to go out to companies like yours, and we like to put out for pricing, and we like to say something like, can we please get pricing for 500 bolts, 500 Dell computers, 500 mice. I bought it. Or a mass spectrometer, or any number of things. But a request for quotation is going to be the United States government reaching out to a vendor or vendors asking, what is the price for this item right now? You cannot be held to that price until the contract is signed. So if it is something that for one reason or another hugely changes in value between the time you quote and the time of contract, you don't have to worry. You're not suddenly going to find yourself in dire circumstance. It is binding at the signing of the contract. The last major type that you see is something called an IFB. This is an invitation for bid. Uh-oh, one of the sheep got out. That's a problem with sheep. But you do occasionally see an IFB. IFBs are becoming pretty rare at this point. If anyone here is in construction and perhaps came from an older construction firm, they may remember the older days of IFB. I have the safe here because that was kind of the way that IFB was done back in the old days. An IFB is an invitation for bid. These are essentially always over the simplified acquisition threshold. These are almost always, we're the federal government, so there's nothing we love like an acronym. LPTA is actually lowest price technically acceptable. This is the one where we put out a whole bunch of prices and whoever's got the low number wins. Sealed bid means that essentially what happens on this one is we give you a packet of forms so that everybody has the same data, and we want to compare apples to apples here. And then we basically fold all the pieces of paper in half. We put them in a safe until bid opening day. And then basically somebody goes through and opens each piece of paper and reads them out loud. And whoever has the lowest number that meets all the specs wins. It's really that easy. And I don't necessarily think that it is the best method in most cases, and I can certainly see why a lot of people would have issues with it. Lowest price technically acceptable is not necessarily the best contracting method. In most areas, we've gone to something called trade-offs, which says that the lowest price is not always the best price. But if you see something called an IFB, that is what it is. That is one of the hangouts or the hangarers where we still have somebody that has these old-fashioned bid openings, where people basically write their number on a piece of paper. It's kept in a safe until bid opening day, and then it's opened on bid opening day. You really only see IFBs if you're involved in construction. When should you think about bidding? Before you think about getting involved in this, you really want to think, becoming involved in federal contracting can be amazing. It can be a great way to diversify your portfolio. A lot of people have found out during COVID that they put a lot of eggs in the same basket, and they may be in a place financially that they never thought that they would find themselves, particularly people who say in the customer service industry, particularly the hospitality industry. It can be a great way to keep the lights on contracts, quote unquote. If you have a couple of federal contracts, you know that they're going to pay the same time every month. So you may have them just to know that you have the stability of contracts that will pay the rent, pay the light bill, pay the phone bill. But make sure, will these help your business model? Will they help your business plan? Make sure you do risk assessment. Make sure you balance them against your workload or your manpower and your resources. Make sure you look at your bonding and capital. In terms of your business model and your business plan, does getting involved in federal contracting actually further your goals as a company? Does it further your vision? Is this just income, or are you doing this to build relationships for your future? And I don't want to suggest here that doing something for income is wrong. And please do not think that I'm throwing shade or I'm in any way suggesting that doing something for money is bad. It is literally my job to help you do things for money. That's fine. I don't want to say that it's wrong. It's just, it is a different choice and it is a different way of going about it between making a short-term investment choice or making a long-term business decision to make contracting a venture that you're going to pursue for your business, or possibly a change in your business model of where you want to go. Also, when you become involved with government contracting, you suddenly and strongly need to learn how to manage risk. Because when you start to tangle with the United States government, the problem with winning a contract with the United States government is you want a contract with the United States government. You become on the hook to us. And as unfortunately, a lot of people in Philadelphia in the past week have found out, things like floods happen. The Vine Street Expressway was suddenly an extension of the Delaware and Schuylkill rivers, inexplicably. And as terrible as that was for everybody that was involved, if you had a government contract, the government, while on one side we feel terribly about it, and the SBA in another area works with companies that have been affected by disaster and can help you with the loans over there. My side, the government contracting side, I feel very badly, but the government doesn't care. And you have to plan in advance, because I feel bad. The government really doesn't care if you're flooded out. The government really doesn't care if you won't wash out for another 6 months. And apparently there's going to be more flooding tonight, and the government won't care about that either. You have to have the product on the date that you promised, and none of this is going to affect the date that the government expects it. And while planning in advance will put you in a better space, you always have to be aware that you've just put yourself on the hook to the largest buyer of goods and services on the entire planet. And that is not necessarily a customer that you want to disappoint. So immediately, for every single contract that you get involved with for the United States government, you want to start managing risk before you even fill out those bids that we were talking about before. And for every single contract for the risk, you need to start by assessing and then addressing. How do you do that? One way can be to create a risk management matrix. For that, you can choose alternatives, rate alternatives, and then look at how they come out. This is one way that was taught to us in the Army back in the day. I don't know if they're still teaching this in the Army. I feel badly for you if they are, but here's an example of a risk matrix. I'm using this as an example of something that you can use to determine whether or not you want to take a federal contract. This can be used for other work. This can be used for other circumstances. As you can see here, I used this. I recently moved. Suggestion, do not move during a global pandemic. It's a little crazy. Getting finances is crazy, but we were in a position where we had to get out. We were living in a townhouse. You can see along the bottom, we compared everything to where we already were. In your case, you're going to want to compare any choice you have to where your business currently is. We were in a townhome. I don't know if you guys heard out in Philly, but out in Montgomery County, we had a townhome in a area where, well, one of our fellow residents literally blew up their own townhome and 3 of the townhomes around it. So we had to get out of the area, let's say. So we looked at a number of other homes. I'm a historian. I always wanted to get an older house and to work on restoring it. So one of the factors we wanted was to look at the age. We wanted some land because we've been living in town. We wanted, obviously, a property that was in not too bad condition. You don't really want something that's falling in on itself. You don't want something too far from work. So we looked at a place out in Morgantown, which is way out in Berks County. We looked at a place in Pottstown, and we looked at a place in Norristown. And we literally took every single house and we looked at it. How old is it? How good of a condition is it? How far of it is it from work? And we rated every single house. One of them was absolutely gorgeous. It was from the 1700s. It was to die for. It's so beautiful. And then you walk inside, and I was literally afraid to walk in at least 6 of the rooms because you could see through to the floor below in 6 of the rooms. One of them had 3 acres of gorgeous, gorgeous wooded land, but is in Berks County and has a bunch of side roads that my own employee had a black ice near fatal crash on 2 years ago. So Morgantown, the property got a 3, but the location and commute got a 1. And you can go through every single one. It turned out that the house that won was a house that we found from the 1920s in Pottstown. The property was nice, it's in good condition. It's 100 years old. It wasn't as good as the ones from the 1700s. 100 years old is pretty nice. And that's the one that won. And that's actually where I'm calling from today. So you can use this for anything. You can use it to choose cars. You can use it to choose contracts. You can use it to choose mentor protege partners. But just sitting down and seeing it can help you envision where the risks are. Here, you can, even if you choose something like number 1, even if we had chosen the house in Morgantown, at least here we can see, okay, the risk here is in the location. How can I go about mitigating that risk? Okay, the property, perhaps we can pull some finance from here and put it over here so that you know where the weaknesses are and you can address them up front. Another huge thing, workload and resources. Make sure that you have the people, make sure that you have the cars, the trucks, the back loaders, the front loaders, the caterpillars, whatever it is that you need to do your business, make sure that you have enough of it around to pick up the additional work. A lot of people don't necessarily think about that. And in terms of bonding and capital, if you may not necessarily be in a line of business that needs bonding. If you do, by all means, you certainly have to. Everybody is going to be in a business that is going to need capital for every additional job you bid. First of all, you're going to need capital to put together the bid itself. These actually do take money to put together, unfortunately. There's copying, there's time spent in man hours, there's putting together the pricing, there's everything else there. There is additionally cost like bonding. There is additionally cost like you may have to bring on additional staff and things like that. But I want to tell you right now, and you see this on the calculator on the right-hand side of the screen. I see this a lot, and so I want to mention this. A lot of people are very careful to make sure that they cover themselves. And they always are very careful to make all of the books balance if they lose every contract that they have out there that they're bidding on. And that's great. That is absolutely wonderful, and you should always do that. Please make sure that you know what is going to happen if every federal contract that you have in the pipeline does not actually go to you. However, a lot of people never make sure to know what to do if every federal contract that they have in the pipeline is won. There is a possibility that every contract you bid, you might win. And I've seen it happen to companies that they bid 6, assuming that they'll only win 3, and then they win 6, and they only have the staff and the capital to have 3. In that case, they have 3 very unhappy government customers. We are not someone you want to make unhappy. And that's, again, a really bad assessment and addressing of risk. So please, even in your commercial market dealings, make sure when you're putting together your business plan that you think when you're putting work into your pipeline, not only about what will happen if none of it comes through, but what will happen if all of it comes through. A lot of people don't necessarily plan for the worst and the best. We've discussed now what are bids. We've discussed now what to do about bids and how to assess risk in bids. Where do you find these bids? They must live out here somewhere. Bids, by and large, tend to live in a couple of places. These are the main spots that you're generally going to run into bids. First and least likely is something called FedBid. You can still put in FedBid. It has a new name, but if you type in FedBid, it'll still come up. FedBid is a reverse auction website. I have named that tune up there because if any of you are old enough to remember, name that tune. It basically goes, I can name that tune in 3 notes. I can name that tune in 2 notes. You go back and forth until somebody calls somebody's bluff and says, name that tune. Same idea with FedBid. I can fill that contract at 5,000. I can fill that contract at 4,000. I can fill that contract at 3,000. The lowest price wins. I am not a huge fan of, I'm sorry, the last word should be bid. I'm not a huge fan of FedBid. It is, again, lowest price technically acceptable. Again, I do not think that lowest price technically acceptable usually results in the best value for the government. It just involves the cheapest item. Cheapest is not usually best. However, FedBid is out there. There are a few agencies that use it, so I wanted to bring it up and let you know about it. But yes, you can, everybody can have copies of the slides. They're going to be on, oh, you see the presenter view. Oh, gracious, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure why you see the presenter view. Let's try this. Everybody will get copies of the slides. They're going to be on my LinkedIn. Is this not the presenter view anymore, I hope? I apologize to folks that were seeing this. Thank you. I'm so sorry I didn't see that. That was lowest price technically acceptable, again, which, as I said, is not necessarily the best value, but I did want to let you guys know it is out there. FedBid, however, is really only used for folks that sell supplies. Next, General Services Administration. A lot of you guys may have heard of something called GSA schedules or something called eBuy. A lot of people have the false idea that the only way to do business with the federal government is through something called GSA schedules or GSA eBuy. There is a big and false idea out there that this is the one true way. GSA schedules are not the only way to do business with the federal government. GSA schedules are not even the only way to do business with GSA. These are massive pre-negotiated contracts. They are difficult to get onto. They can be costly. And if you don't sell enough, GSA might throw you back off anyway. If you sell something like IT and you think GSA schedules might be a good match for you, please give me a call and I'm happy to discuss it with you or get you in touch with GSA. But please be aware, for most people, GSA is not the greatest idea that people think. But if it is right for you, we can certainly help you get in touch with the right people to make that choice. For most people and most choices, where you're going to find the bids is going to be on SAM. Again, that is the System for Award Management, SAM.gov. It used to be that all of these things lived on a site called FBO, FedBizOps. FedBizOps went away a few months ago and has been eaten by SAM. Every federal agency who wishes to buy something that is A, over $25,000, B, not a major item involving national security, C, not being procured under the 8A program as a non-competitive, is going to be up here. So almost everything is here unless it's a teeny tiny buy, in which case people are just making phone calls. There are a lot of free services to monitor SAM. If you are interested in that sort of service, please get in touch with me or get in touch with one of our small business development centers, and they can help you register to use SAM the most effectively. But like I said, if you're not in SAM, you can't even begin to play with the federal contracting system anyway. So you have to be here to start. What are you looking for when you get into SAM? I said that this is something called a combined synopsis solicitation. You want to look at that solicitation. You want to make special note of things like, is this a set aside? A set aside means that only certain people are allowed to put in a bid on this one. It may be something like only women can bid, only 8As, only club zone. If you see something like that and you don't know whether or not you qualify, again, that's literally what I'm here for. And I turned down a lot of jobs with 3-letter agencies and a lot of jobs with extremely famous government contractors because I wanted to work with people like you. You're not bothering me. You're not annoying me. You're not asking a stupid question. Please come to me. I have green hair. I'm not scary. You can come ask me a question. It doesn't bother me. You can come ask me anything. Make sure you notice the date it's due, because if it's even 3 minutes late, the contracting officer doesn't have to open your proposal, which is can be awful. You can spend $25,000 on a proposal that no one has to open. Make sure you check the point of contact and how they say to contact them. Some contracting officers will only accept email. Some contracting officers will only accept common carrier like FedEx. If you send it the wrong way, they don't have to open that either. Check attachments, check things like clauses. Clauses can be extremely important, and a lot of people don't know SAM. Is there a minimum or maximum number of awards you can have with SAM? SAM is just a system to identify your company, so you can have as many awards as you can get. Go for the most you can, man. Shoot for the stars. Please, let's go for the stars. And I mean that. I want every single small business in my reign, I want to see do as well as conceivably possible. So please reach out. I would love you to help you set the new record. If there are any notes on a solicitation, check them out, because the contracting officer is telling you something in a note that you need to know. Often it's something like there may be a site visit that you need to know. And if there is an attachment, contracting officers don't add attachments for their own amusement. If there's an attachment, it's in there because it's desperately important. And contracting officers do not do walkthroughs for their own amusement. Contracting officers are by and large not overly athletic people. We do not want to be out traipsing around on a work site because we have to wear hats and we have to go outside and there are bugs. So if we're making you come outside and look at something, we have to go outside and look at something, so you really need to go outside and look at it. So if it says site visit, move earth and water and air to be at that site visit. If there is a problem with the solicitation, please reach out to us, reach out to Temple, reach out to anyone you can. Reach back to the contracting officer and say, hey, I think there's a problem here. Can I get help? Never, ever, 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 ever assume, please. Because if you assume, you can shoot yourself in the foot in whole new interesting ways. If you remember nothing else I said tonight, and I get it because I often don't either, please, these are the main points of what I said this evening. The main types of synopsis and solicitations you are going to see, again, are the RFQ, that's a request for quotation, RFP, request for proposal, and an IFB, invitation for bid. We didn't really talk about an RFI, that is a request for information. That's basically a contracting officer asking vendors, hey, I have a question. Can you give us an idea about what the answer might be? Know the sites. Where do you actually find information about getting a bid? That's going to be FedBid, GSA, and our favorite friend, SAM. When deciding whether or not to place a bid, remember you have to balance your manpower, your resources, your capital, your bonding, and whether or not this is actually going to take you where you need to be. And again, please, both in government contracting and in general, when you're making a commercial or a federal government choice, make sure that you're managing risk. You need to both assess and address the risk before making any of these choices. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a dire, dire position. Anybody who needs to contact me, again, I mentioned my name is Jennifer Tillman. I am the head of government contracting for Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I have a second here in Eastern Pennsylvania. His name is George Tapia. He is also available. These are our email addresses. You can always reach out to my office. We have free information about all these areas. This is usually a bunny with his feet up waiting to hear, but in light of the fact that it's been raining for like 3 weeks and it's supposed to rain more. I went over to when the giant rubber ducky visited the tall ships. So hopefully you guys will make it through tonight without having another 12 feet of water. But thank you so much for coming out today. And yes, thank you so much for saying that. Any time that somebody reaches out and says, pay me, please, timeout defense, don't pay them. Stop and call Temple, call me, call George, call somebody, and don't let them take your money until you double check, because there are a lot of very bad people out there without your best interests in mind. And I would rather that no one here fell victim to them, because I was a lawyer and I know slimy people, and there are a lot of slimy people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. As we are wrapping up here, I'm going to post a quick link in the survey and in the chat for a survey that is required by our funders at the SBA so that we can continue to offer these workshops. And I'm going to pass it over to Maureen.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, Jen, for doing such a great job. As we were planning this series, not only was Jen really willing to help us get the series put together, but she was actually really excited to do the presenting. So thank you so much. So I just wanted to also introduce myself. My name is Maureen Herzig. I am the procurement specialist on staff at the Small Business Development Center. At the SBDC, I work with clients that are interested in doing business with the government. So we at Temple work very closely with Jen to provide another avenue of support. So many of the clients that I work with, we focus on readiness, making sure that government procurement actually makes sense for the company at that time. But also we work a lot with market research, identifying different markets, trying to figure out where the money on your products or services are being spent and where in the government. And so we have a lot of different resources that are at our fingertips. And one thing I want to say is when Jen says, don't ever hesitate to ask her questions, I ask her all the questions and she always gets back to me immediately. So she really is an asset. Keep her in your back pocket. And I just wanted to also let everyone know that this is one part of a series. We have, it looks like, four additional sessions coming up. Next week will be contract types with Jennifer again. And then on the 22nd, we will be discussing market research tools. So myself and Isabel Crome, who works with me at Temple, are putting that together. The great thing about government procurement is that there's a lot of public information available. And so we'll be spending some time helping you identify how to find that information. On the 29th will be a roundtable type of discussion regarding certifications. And the final session will be on October 6th, and that will be about capability statements. So I highly encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about government procurement to attend these sessions. They will all be on Wednesdays from 4 to 5. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to myself as well as Jen. I will drop my email address in the chat. And that concludes everything I wanted to add. Does anybody have, are there any additional questions? Okay, Carmen, that we can, I think that we can wrap up the session.
If we are good to wrap up the session, yeah, I'm good to close out. Julianne said that the survey isn't allowing her to submit. I will go over and I'll check in with that and see if I can edit that. So just revisit in about 10 minutes and then I'll see if it has everyone is having that issue. So I'll tweak it and then within the next 5 minutes, it should be good to go. But on that note, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Jen. Have a great rest of your week.
Hope to see everyone next week. Have a great
Thank you. Bye-bye.